Conservative leader Pierre and Prime Minister Mark Carney had a sit-down meeting today. After vowing cooperation, Poilievre said he wants to work with the government to address the cost of living and trade tensions with the United States. But as he was speaking to reporters ahead of that meeting, well, this happened.
Canadians need hope right now. They need hope. You want to sneak by here? Good to see you. This is not hope. This is not hope over here. Well, look at this. We've got a. We're working. We're actually going to work. You better start. We've got. This is the group here that have given you the most expensive groceries in the G7.
So one big happy family. Afterwards, a spokesperson for Poilievre said it was a good meeting. The leader pushed the Prime Minister to introduce fast-track policies for an affordable, safe and self-reliant Canada. The leader pushed for lower taxes on Canadians. He expressed his disappointment at the size of the deficit. He also offered specific suggestions on how to bring back investment and restated his offer to help in the Canada-US negotiations. The Prime Minister put out his own statement on social media saying he met with Pierre today. Canada's new government is moving fast, and we need Parliament to move swiftly to deliver for Canadians. We've put forward bills to strengthen bail and sentencing laws, build up a stronger economy, cut costs for the middle class, and protect Canadian workers. This is an important time to be working together and to pass the legislation Canadians are counting on. Meanwhile, also in the spirit of cooperation, one of Mr. Poilievre's caucus members says he is headed to Washington. Ontario Conservative MP Jamil Jivani says he's going to try to help the government improve trade relations. But here at home, the Prime Minister is kind of downplaying just how much of a help this trip will actually be.
We have extensive contacts with the U.S. administration, constant contacts with the U.S. administration. Minister LeBlanc gave a briefing to Mr. Giovanni, who I don't believe is the trade critic for the opposition, certainly not the Minister of International Trade, nor the Prime Minister.
So what do you think he's going down there?
What do you think of Prime Minister's letter?
What do you think?
I think it might have something to do with
Mr. Carney.
Whatever will the Power panel talk about? We've got Amanda Alvaro. She is a former Liberal Party communications strategist. Tim Powers has worked as a strategist for Conservative parties. And here with me in the studio, Jordan Leiknitz is a former NDP strategist, and Sherelle Evelyn is the managing editor of the Hill Times. It's good to see you all. Amanda, how do you parse the readouts? Let's start with the sit-down. I don't know if there's ever a stand-up, but let's start with that meeting between the two leaders. What do you make of what we saw from the readouts, interestingly, of that particular encounter?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. So first of all, the meeting itself is like, is this meeting about optics? Is this meeting truly about cooperation? You can see how each of them, to some degree, would be better off if there was a level of cooperation. Obviously, for the Prime Minister, that ability to move things more quickly through Parliament, as he stated in his readout following the meeting, he doesn't want things to get stymied. If he's going to be working on behalf of Canadians, he needs those things to move along. And who has been blocking? Well, most often the Conservative Party. So, you know, optically, that makes a lot of sense to me. Then on the other hand, I think Poilievre has a bit of a job to do. As we know, we've seen the favorability of Carney continue to rise. We've seen Poilievre's negatives continue to show. And while he's doing really well with his base, we also know that he needs to broaden his appeal to Canadians. So, you know, preventing some of these things from moving along is not a way to gain favor with Canadians. He needs, I think, to be seen to be cooperating, at least in some areas. So the meeting itself makes sense. The readouts, fine. I think his scrum is the thing that catches me, because it's like Poilievre cannot help himself. So I picture somebody, some communications person in the back being like, you know what, you just need to be a little more likable. You just need to stop talking in slogans. How about not doing politics by internet? And it's like he really wants to get there, but he can't quite, because the minute he's thrown off, because he gets this, you know, grandstand of people behind him, he immediately goes, he backpedals and goes into the place that he's comfortable, and that's throwing jabs. And that is not what he needs to do if he wants to gain favor with more Canadians.
Well, Tim, I'm old enough to remember when readouts were impossible and unnecessary, but here we have them today from a meeting that was just a few hours ago. Is this about doing everything they can to make Parliament work, or doing everything they can to make sure Mark Carney doesn't call a spring election?
A bit of that. I don't think heated rivalry has anything to worry about. There wasn't the same degree of passion and sparks flying, so no worries there. But look, I think also we did have the spectacle this week, David, that's influencing this of former Prime Minister Harper, former Prime Minister Chrétien being very direct in their language of saying, look, everybody, we're your senior statesmen, and we're saying this is a unique time. You need to get together, at least on the bigger issues, and find a way forward. I think that is part and parcel of what is driving this. It is about the spring election, a potential spring election for the Conservatives. Poilievre would be stupid not to try and find a way to avoid that at the moment and let the clock run on the Liberal government so that they can have some more scars. But I think it's also the broader public mood. I think there's little tolerance right now for, fists flying at each other when people would prefer the fists were flying at south of the border.
Yeah, Stephen Harper talked about that at his portrait unveiling yesterday, too. The band together against external threats and internal policies that promote disunity. Jordan, how did you see how it all played out today? And your thoughts on what Amanda had to say about the scrum?
Yes, I think the scrum was the most telling thing today, although if you didn't make the joke about the readouts, I was going to. So. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there's an imperative on both sides, and I think Amanda said this really well. The Prime Minister does need to get things through the House, and the Conservatives clearly are attempting to soft launch yet another version of Pierre Poilievre's style of leadership. We saw that of course, at the convention over the weekend. Well, there wasn't really a big change in terms of the content. He was still, talking about how he's going to remain firm in his conservative values. He's not looking to moderate. He didn't speak about Trump, and he was still casting the election as a success, even though it was a pretty catastrophic loss for the party. What you did see was a real shift in tone. You saw him smiling more. You saw him making overtures about the need to work together. And so I think that this follows from that. And it really is about lifting the ceiling to his growth. And it's about turning the temperature down on a potential spring election, because he went into that convention, notwithstanding the strong result he got, with the lowest favorability that he's had to date. Still 20 points behind his party. So he needs some time. That is really his imperative, is to gain time in order for Mr. Carney's favorables to decline and for his own to potentially recover a little bit if he's able to continually demonstrate that tone. But he'll find, as I think the New Democrats found, that it's a difficult tightrope to walk. Cooperating, well-maintaining criticism is very tough. And I think we saw a little bit of that in the scrum today.
Yeah, I mean, in Shirella, there are limits to any opposition party's cooperation, right? And I think the big test will be the Budget Implementation Act and how far they're willing to go on that, given the size of the deficit and all of the criticisms they've had there. I mean, what do you make of what we've seen today?
I mean, well, on the budget, just this afternoon, the Liberal Party, they've already put out, a fundraising email just kind of based off of this meeting that they had that the Prime Minister had with Poilievre, and he specifically that, it was one of those from the desk of Mark Carney emails, and he specifically talked about needing the opposition to not vote against the budget and things like that. So that is clearly very, top of mind, because the Prime Minister has already burned other bridges. He's already burned the bridges with Elizabeth May and the Green Party. He's kind of burned, more or less, basically burned the bridges with the NDP. I don't know if they're going to be willing to just abstain their way through the rest of the votes, simply because, when it comes to the actual bill, there's some things in there that they will either have to stand up for, or, to be literally sitting them out is going to be difficult for some of them, I think. So at this point, it is important that there is that sense of cooperation, as everybody has already stated. But also to go back to the idea of, having the elder statesmen talk about unity. These are, at the same time, if you look at where some of the base of support is for the Conservatives, it's a lot of younger people, and they're going to be looking at that like, yeah, okay, boomer, like that was then, this is now, and we want to see people who are willing to fight for us.
Right.
And that has been Pierre Poilievre's kind of raison d'etre, is to be seen as the fighter, the person who is pushing for, everybody who's being left behind, and a lot of times that is the younger Canadians. So how do you balance wanting to stand up in that sense of unity that everybody's calling for, while also trying to push and push and push to make sure that, you know, the people in your constituency and your base are feeling still represented.
Yeah, that generational advantage that they definitely had in the election is shifting a little bit in some of the crosstabs of the polls, but, you know, that is definitely a place that they've made inroads, right? Whether it sustains, I'm not sure. But Amanda, Jamil Jivani's in Washington trying to make inroads. What do you make of the way the Prime Minister responded to that? He looked at the media and goes, well, I think it probably has more to do with you, you know, essentially saying it's a media play. What do you make of what we're seeing there?
Yeah, and I think this is where I think Mark Carney is really finding his stride. He knows how to hit those notes so well now. He comes off as, you know, it's not as much as being dismissive as it is him sort of saying, like, yes, yes, off they go. They're doing their thing. They're welcome to do it. But let me remind you that he's, you know, not the trade minister. He's not the trade critic. And that we have people in those positions, in positions of authority, who are having the conversations on behalf of Canadians that you would expect us to have. So it's like this interesting line that he always manages to really hit. Well, he's able to promote exactly what's happening on behalf of Canadians from the government's perspective, while at the same time throwing the opposition a bit under the bus without it feeling super aggressive. So I like this tone that he strikes. I think Canadians are responding to it, and I think that's why we're seeing, you know, his numbers go up in the polls.
So Tim, you know, Pierre Poilievre was asked today whether he, you know, sanctioned this by Mr. Jivani, and he kind of never answered it directly. He said, what I've told my MPs is they need to stand up for jobs, and, you know, and obviously Jivani represents an auto sector town. What do you make of this? Because Jivani doesn't even have a critics portfolio, and he's going on a foreign trip.
I think he's parked himself under a bus, which a couple of people may want to drive over him with, David. I note in the readouts, going back to the readouts that you read out a few moments ago, there is no mention in that readout that Pierre Poilievre dispatched Jamil Jivani to Washington. I think they're letting Mr. Jivani just hang out there on his own. I'm sure, as you have heard, it's not the most popular thing in the Conservative Party, what Mr. Jivani is doing right now. You know, enjoy your trip down south, Jamil. I hope it's effective.
Jordan, how do you see it? That maybe some freelancing going on in a leaders' caucus where we just got 87.4% support from the membership in Calgary.
Yeah, I think it's probably a huge headache for the leader and the leader's office, especially because of who Mr. Jivani is within the Conservative movement. I mean, this is a guy who just completed a campus tour across Canada railing against DEI. Does that sound familiar? This is something where if you send him down, or if he goes and takes himself down to the United States side by side with MAGA Trump supporters, there's a real risk that Canadians will be reminded of the similarities there. So I think that for the Conservative Party, when their leadership and the folks around Poilievre are clearly trying to position him in a new way tonally in terms of cooperation and trying to form some sort of common front against the American threat, even if they don't want to say the name Trump in the speech, it's really probably pretty damaging.
Yeah, Cheryl, I mean, what good can come of this? I don't say that sarcastically. I mean, like, but what can someone who's not the opposition leader, not a government minister, no official role? I mean, I get, like, doing the media rounds, but these are meetings more than that. I don't know. What do you think of it?
I mean, it's not uncommon for MPs of all partisan stripe to go across the border and make connections and network and so on and so forth with American counterparts. That is something that is encouraged, quite frankly, but what has been missing, you know, talking about the readout, it did say that Poilievre had restated his offer to help with Canada-US negotiations. I don't know what that means, but really because from Pierre Poilievre's side of things, he has still not made that official opposition leader trip down south. He has not been making those overtures and doing that outreach. So aside from some of the members of his caucus who are members of the Canada-US Interparliamentary Group who do make those trips, it is good to be able to be in the rooms. It is good to have those conversations. It's good to know who to talk to. And obviously, it's no secret that Jamil Jivani has a direct line to somebody in the White House through the vice president. But I do think, as Jordan said, when you are casting yourself as saying, you know what, I'm going to, he kind of couched it and framed it in some sort of like reasonableness of, I'm going to go down there. I know I'm going to get some flack for it and you're going to hear about it, but I really need to do this because gosh darn it, our country needs me to. I don't know exactly what the country needs of him in that role without direction from his leader or the prime minister.
I was talking to Jason Kenney about this. Me and Rosie were at the Conservative Convention last week, and he said Mr. Poilievre should go and give a speech, go to Washington, go to London. Has he taken like a big foreign trip since he's been opposition leader? Sherelle, maybe just on that, I can't think of it. It's very much focused on domestic issues, but I can't remember a time, and please, OLO, if I'm wrong, send me a text, of him going to Washington. Can you think of anything, Sherelle?
I can't think of, as the opposition leader,
in an official political capacity,
nothing is immediately coming to mind.
Okay, all right. We're going to take a... Go ahead, Tim, quickly.
I mean, they're obviously very careful of not wanting the visual of Mr. Poilievre meeting President Trump. This isn't Brian Mulroney going to see Ronald Reagan or Stephen Harper going down to see George Bush. And I don't even remember if he did, to be honest with you, but certainly Mr. Mulroney did go see Mr. Reagan. I think they're very cautious of the challenge of going to Washington right now. London, yeah, that's fine. Go elsewhere. Don't meet with Peter Mandelson. Probably not a great guy to meet with at the moment, but there are other things you could do.
Yeah, sure, but you could go to a state capital and meet with the governor, things like this, right? It's just there's been little to none of that. Anyway,
pre-Trump, he didn't make the trip either.
Right, exactly. And now that Jivani is doing it, I was just wondering about that.